Okay, Boxing Fanatics, welcome to the 10th episode of the Boxing Fanatics podcast. And with me today for this special milestone, I'm delighted to be joined by Mr. Steve Wellings. Steve, we were meant to get White versus Joyce on April 5th, but we've actually ended up with a better fight. Hrgovic comes in as a somewhat late replacement. Yeah, what's your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think, yeah, good evening, Dan. Good evening, everybody who's listening. I think I agree with you, actually. I'm glad you said that because I think I'm looking forward to it a little bit more because we've seen what Dillian White's bringing to the table lately, which isn't too much. In fact, he's probably spending too much time at the table, judging by his physique in that last fight against Ebenezer Tete and
Mm.
Hrgovic. Yeah, I don't know. We last saw him against Dubois. I haven't seen head nor tail of him since, and who knows what kind of condition he's going to be turning up in. But I think it's going to be a decent rumble actually between the two boys, and it's going to be a slugfest for as long as it lasts. So I agree with you. I think it's going to be a fun spectacle, if not the sweetest of science, let's say.
Yeah. I don't think there's any shades of Pernell Whitaker in there, but it should be a fun watch. These guys do have a bit of history. They did fight in the WSB many years ago. Joyce winning via split decision. So there's a bit of history there. They do know each other. And yeah, I mean, I agree about Dillian White. I thought he looked quite terrible against Tete, to be honest. Um, but then again, you could say the same thing about Joyce recently, to be honest. I mean, Joyce, coming off a loss to Derek Chisora, and Hrgovic obviously losing to Daniel Dubois. Steve, is it fair to say that this is last chance saloon for both men? That a loss for either one of them must spell retirement now.
Yeah, I'm not so sure about retirement because there's always a market for a heavyweight, especially one to get beaten up by the next generation, or the heavyweights tend to generate that cash flow. But it's definitely last chance saloon, you would imagine, as far as any world title aspirations are concerned. I mean, the last time, when was the last time Joyce looked good, let alone, I know he beat Cash Ali, but he didn't look great in that fight. You're going all the way back to September 2022 like 2.5 years ago. It's crazy. I think he looked terrible. He got the Zhang fight, like I said, Ali didn't look good against him either. Derek Chisora fight last time, there's no way he should have been losing to Chisora, although we all know what Derek is. But um, the loser can come again to a certain extent. They'll always recycle a heavyweight until they can't, they can barely stand. But as for world title aspirations, yeah, the winner's got to move on. But even the winner, Dan, I don't think necessarily going to be going onwards and upwards because if they have a grueling fight, the winner could be in no great shakes either. So I think this could be a lose-lose situation for both of them. And it's only a 10 rounder as well, according to BoxRec, which I'm really shocked considering they're both championship caliber operators. But I think the winner and the loser could be staring down the barrel after this one.
That's an interesting take, to be fair. That's an interesting take. I mean, Joyce, I always find it fascinating, Joyce, how he literally we've been through this before. I'll just repeat it. Like I always find it fascinating how highly talented he was. And then after since those two Zhang defeats, it's like a just completely different man. There's really I don't know, it seems like there's nothing left. I like Joyce. I think he comes across as a nice guy. I think he's pretty dopey, pretty funny, but I don't know. I don't see anything left there, really. As for Hrgovic, I do feel like Hrgovic is maybe a little bit somewhat underrated a little bit because I know his performances prior to Daniel Dubois weren't great. But I think when you compare what he did against Dubois compared to Joshua, he actually is aged quite well because against Dubois, at least he landed a lot and he won a few rounds against Dubois before he kind of ultimately ran out of gas. Um, do you think I think it's fair to say that Joyce is not what he was, but do you think people are maybe underestimating Hrgovic a little bit?
I'm not sure, to be honest. He's had a strange career. I've never really known where to place him. He's clearly a powerful guy. He's got good backing in the corner. He had a good amateur career, etc. You know all that. He's a very laid back sort of character, and he sat on the IBF ranking for years. I think I remember Cali Solan talking about it, and it could have been 2 or 3 years, and he was happy sitting about. And I thought he lost the fight to Zhilei Zhang. It was a close fight. He got the decision. I didn't think he deserved to get that decision. and then it took him 12 rounds to get rid of McKean. And I think he came in the Dubois fight thinking, oh, beat him as an amateur. I'm going to be able to wail away with these right hands and get him out of there. And he seemed like he was out of condition. He seemed like he wasn't prepared for what Dubois. The fact that Dubois, we'd all seen Dubois against Joyce, so maybe he thought, oh, he's going to fold. Obviously, again, we saw against Usyk, Dubois showed that sort of pattern, that reputation for folding under pressure. And I think Hrgovic just had it in his head that he's going to keep winging the right hands and Dubois was going to fold. And when he didn't, after a while, and the fact he got the cut as well, and he started to gas, Hrgovic just lost all confidence. So I don't know whether he's underrated or not. No, I'd suggest maybe not. I think he's probably just in his place where he deserves to be. And I'm glad he's took this fight because whenever White pulled out, there were a few names being bandied about,
Mhm.
and they weren't particularly inspiring. So I think he's coming in, sees this as a last chance saloon, and hopefully he'll be in better shape. And Joyce has a chin now, seemingly once a cement chin, but has now been cracked. And Hrgovic will probably fancy he has the power to crack it a little bit more.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I did actually watch a video with Hrgovic, an interview of I think it was with Box Nation, and yeah, he did kind of admit taking Daniel Dubois quite lightly, and I think yeah, in the lead up, he did seem supremely confident.
Yeah.
Uh, Obviously, Dubois, those two losses he had, they weren't a good look. Let's be honest, they weren't a good look. Against Joyce, I mean, he had a fractured eye socket. I'm not going to blame anyone, but I guess in this realm, it's frowned upon to quit. And then against Usyk, I don't think he was hurt at all. I think it was just, I guess, mental exhaustion. Um, so that was in Hrgovic's mind, I suppose, going into that fight. And yeah, I guess he just thought he'd blow him out of there. Um, as for Joyce, I mean, Joyce is an interesting one because what can he actually do differently at this stage of his career? That's what I'm trying to think because he's always been this guy who just comes forward, aka the Juggernaut, just comes forward, I guess throws slow fudding bombs, but ultimately just overwhelms you. He's always had a good work rate. He's not been the quickest, especially with his hands. Um, but I mean, what could Joyce do differently at this stage of his career? Can he change his style? Can there be some sort of rebirth there for him, do you reckon?
Well, I don't think there could be a rebirth, but I think he's shown in the past there are different elements to his game. Like in the Dubois fight, for example, if you remember, he kind of stood off and boxed really well behind the left jab and didn't commit as often as he has done. And he's had a strange career because I'm the same as you. I like him. Early on, when he made his debut, it wasn't, like a ballyhoo debut. And everyone's like, oh, great, Joe Joyce, Olympian, he's going to be amazing. They fast tracked him. He was seen as a bit of a joke. But, he took too many shots. I remember Moraine Stavern landing numerous right hands on him. Bryant Jennings hurt him with a body shot, and everyone made a big deal of that. And when he came into the Dubois fight, a lot of people were picking Dubois, but I suppose Dubois was, what, the head on a couple of the cards, or if not all
Mm.
three of the cards,
Yep, yep.
whenever the injury took place. But Joyce showed a different element to his game there. He showed the amateur, and then all of a sudden everyone said, oh, this is the Joe Joyce who knew as an amateur. He can step off and box. He is a talented guy. He's maybe a bit more of a thinker than we first perceived. And then against Takam, he took a lot of shots. Against Joseph Parker,
Mm.
I blame my old mate Dev Sarni for this because he was part of the sort of immovable juggernaut chin. They dressed him up as the cartoon character, whatever that juggernaut thing
Mm.
was, and it was like the whole promotion. I don't know if it was the Parker fight or leading into the Zhang fight.
Yeah.
Um, his chin's immovable. It can't be hurt. He's a monster. He just keeps on chewing up shots and keep coming forward, which to that point, the evidence suggested that he did. And then Zhang just absolutely cracked the chin like an Easter egg, did it again. And now, seemingly, I don't know, Joyce was right there about to sort of go to that next level. And I still don't know why to this day. I mean, I'm glad they did because, you like to see people taking challenges. Why they took that Zhang fight in the first place? I know it was an interim title and all, but
Mm.
he seemed like he could have held out for bigger things. Anyway, that's a side note. As soon as Zhang cracked that chin, and Zhang, for all his faults, I know he's slow and old, he has got fast hands, and the right hook, as much as the left hand, is a very underrated
Yeah.
rated weapon. And all of a sudden, he caught Joyce, and then from that second fight, I think it's that second fight, he looked like a real broken man in that second fight. He was stopped very quickly, could not get out the way of the shots, and all of a sudden, the shots he was taking before, he couldn't take them, and mentally and physically, I think he was just done from that point. And then, he just went, he wasn't what we thought he was, and which was okay. The chin. Chin's the first thing to go. So now I just think he could possibly be washed up.
That's a great point, to be fair, about his performance against Daniel Dubois. I actually forget about that sometimes. He did box brilliantly in that fight. The jab was amazing in that fight.
Mhm.
He kept him on the jab, and Dubois really, struggled at times to close the distance. It was because Joyce is slow, but I don't think he has slow feet. He is. Sounds weird calling him athletic, but he is somewhat athletic because you do see him doing backflips after the fight and stuff. So he has got some athleticism, and he has had fast feet in the past. And that performance against Dubois was, yeah, was brilliant. To be fair, I remember watching that and I was thinking, oh wow, Joyce. I don't know, he could go really far. He could win a world title. I suppose. I mean, look, if it was that version of Joyce, I think I think a lot of people would be giving him a chance against Hrgovic. Um, but that version just seems, I guess so far removed. And like you said, I mean, Zile Zhang, I mean, yeah, Zhang can crack. We all know that now. Zhang can really, really crack. He's extremely dangerous. With that big left hand and that right hook. So. As for Hrgovic, he is actually being trained by Abel Sanchez now, which is quite an interesting development. Obviously, Abel Sanchez, known primarily for working with Gennady Golovkin. What do you think about this link up, Steve? Could this be because it's Big Bear and stuff, they train in the mountains and all that. Could that be like a bit of a, I don't know, a bit of a I don't know, a bit of a game changer, maybe like some newfound stamina for Hrgovic training in the mountains with Abel?
Possibly. I don't know. It just seems to be sort of personality thing for Hrgovic. He's 32 now. I'm not sure what Abel Sanchez is going to be able to do with him that the other coaches weren't able to do with him. I don't know. It just seems like a mentality thing for me. Obviously, if he's in good shape, that's what he needs to be to repel someone of Joyce's, the way he fights and all. So it can't hurt. But yeah, the big heavyweights are different, aren't they? That they can't maybe just run for the old knees as much as the others, and I don't know whether he can avail of those things as well as the sort of lighter weight guys and that. I just don't know. I don't know whether they get to a point in their career, I think these guys where very small changes that kind of train or really implement what they need to do with them. I don't know. I think it'll come down to the night. To be honest, I'm really not sure if Sanchez will have a have an impact on him or not. And just going back to your point on Joyce, actually, it's a good point because you see, if you look at the two wins, the best wins for Joyce, he dominated and stopped Dubois. Well, okay, it was a close fight, but he on the jab, closed the eye. It's a conclusive finish, let's say that.
Mm-mm.
Josie Parker was the other one as well. Dominated and stopped Josie Parker. Now those two guys are very much in the ascendancy, and Joyce looks like he's on skid row. So it's just funny the way things happen in boxing.
Oh, unbelievable, unbelievable. I actually think about the Parker one. I can't believe he beat Parker. That's crazy to think. That's aged so well. Thinking, how has he beat Parker? I mean, I do remember that fight, and Parker was landing, but at that point,
Yeah,
the granite chin was well intact, and he could not put a dent in Joyce at all. And Parker, who's actually got a decent chin himself, was suffered a massive knockout there by Joyce. Yeah, I mean, incredible. That's boxing, I suppose, Steve, isn't it? That's boxing.
yeah,
It's amazing how far you can fall within the space of a couple of years. Um, yeah, unbelievable stuff. In terms of the keys to victory in this fight, I mean, I'm not sure because in my mind I'm thinking if I'm going off. I mean, somewhat. I mean, they're both of them at their worst. I'm scared this is going to be just a war of attrition a bit of a slugfest, because Hrgovic seems to gas out after 6 rounds or whatever. He tends to lose his speed a bit.
mm.
Joyce, in fairness, does kind of maintain somewhat the same pace throughout. But is it possible we can see a bit of a slugfest here, where it's going to be just, I don't know, war of attrition, where I don't know who can just kind of outslug the other one to victory.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it'll be. I think early on they might try and size each other with the jab, but after a while they're going to be throwing these huge haymakers. I can just see it in my mind's eye now, just right hands coming over from Joyce, Hrgovic responding, and just seeing who stands up to it. And it'd be interesting to see how Joyce's chin holds up because Hrgovic is a bit of a banger. But yeah, they're going to be knackered after a few rounds, slugging it out. It's going to be great fun, I think, but yeah, it's not going to be much of a boxing match, which is a stupid thing to say, really, because they're both very decorated amateurs, and they can both box within that sort of system. But obviously, as we know, three threes and 10 rounds are completely different things. So yeah, I envisage the same as what you're saying there. I think after 6 or 7 rounds, if it's still going, they'll just be throwing just haymakers at each other, and it just be wild fun. Hopefully so.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, I can't see any different, to be fair. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's going to be a slugfest. I mean, it's going to be a good, yeah, it's going to be a good spectacle. So it's going to be a good spectacle in terms of. So let's just talk hypothetically. I mean, I mean, the winner of this fight, who could they realistically face? Because I think you made a good point before. It is a bit of a lose-lose because there's no mandatory position on the line, and I don't know. I feel like the heavyweight division is kind of on the rise a little bit. There's so many guys coming through and stuff, and I don't know, like who could the winner face at this point? Because the winner is unlikely to get a world title shot, so it's almost
Mm.
like doesn't matter who wins, they're gonna almost be put in with like, an upcoming prospect, maybe like Moses Talma or something, and then that's another very difficult fight to win. What do you think the route is, I guess, for both men if they emerge victorious?
Um, I don't know. I just think from a cynic's point of view, I don't see a route for either of them, to be honest, other than being food for up and coming prospects or sort of someone looking to not even make a defense, but just I don't know. I just Hrgovic he has a bit more of an element of mystery to me because we can't really just say about the Dubois fight, although we kind of saw his level a little bit in the Zhang fight too. But Joyce now, like I say, it's been 2.5 odd years or something before since he's looked really good. So I think Joyce has absolutely made a few fights down the road, or maybe sooner than you think for just being fed to Itoma. As you said, I think that's perfect for him. Hrgovic could maybe jump the queue if he beats him and become the Itoma gatekeeper instead. But yeah, I don't see either of these guys even if they beat one another, moving on to then get the wins sufficient to move on. Like you see a guy like Cabiel or something, he has
Mm.
momentum behind him. He's getting a good win every time and he's getting his just reward. Parker has momentum behind him. You see these guys, these two fellas just don't feel like momentum guys to me. So I think they're just fighting to become the guy who loses to the guy, as Lukey says, which I think is a good phrase, or the guy who loses to the guy who loses to the guy. The sort of that step on the ladder. So yeah, it's a very cynical response, but I don't see a path to world title for either of these two boys. Sorry.
Oh wow. Looking bleak then. It's looking bleak. It's almost like they're fighting just for, I don't know, I guess another payday, I suppose. So,
Thing is, though, sometimes you can just put them together to make a good fight. Wardley's another one who comes to my mind. He could, I know he's fighting Pulev, but he could maybe pick up the winner or something like that. But the PBC are very good at this. Often you would see like faded names like Peter Quillen, Alfredo Angulo, Danny Garcia was another one, and you think, oh, why are they putting those two guys together? But they tend to make good fights, between these faded sort of veterans. So maybe they're just putting together a good fight, possibly something like that.
yeah, I mean, it's no secret that, a lot of these fighters do get recycled a lot. And
Mm.
yeah, I guess, yeah, it's very harsh to say, but is that what's going on? What's going on? I mean, to be honest, I mean, if I'm being honest, Hrgovic, I think he's still somewhat young, his early 30s. So if he wins in good fashion, then, I think who knows? But Joyce, I think he's going to be 40 soon, and yeah, I can only imagine he's only got a couple fights left now. Let's go into the prediction then, Steve. I'll let you go first this time. So, who do you think is going to come out on top out of Hrgovic and Joyce, and by what method?
Hmm. That's a good question. I haven't really thought about it, which I suppose I probably should have done. I'll go for Hrgovic. I think he'd just be that bit fresher. And I'll say that the Joyce chin cracks. Hrgovic is in good shape, as you said. And I'll go for Hrgovic by ninth round stoppage. It might go the distance. I just see Hrgovic either way, which I don't know. I like Joyce. I just really do feel like he's over the cliff now. And Hrgovic's power will tell. I'll go for Hrgovic ninth round stoppage.
Yeah, I think I somewhat agree. I might even go a little bit earlier, maybe seventh,
Hmm.
maybe seventh or eighth.
Yeah,
But
that's fair.
it really depends what state Hrgovic comes in as well. If he's kind of still, not physically, not as conditioned as he should be, then this could be another like tedious 12 rounds where, like, like Hrgovic versus Dempsey McKean. You just couldn't get, like, it
Yeah,
took so long to get him out of there, and it could be one of those ones. Um, let's just quickly touch on the other heavyweight cards. Just a prediction. Obviously, Richard React was meant to be Richard Reactable versus Lawrence Okoli. That fell through, which is a little bit disappointing.
yeah.
We've got still David Adelaide versus uh, Jamie TKV. What do you think about that one, Steve? How do you see that one going?
I think you got to favour Adelaide. TKV, I think he's talented actually, but he's not in the greatest of shape. And can he sustain things at this level? I saw somebody saying, "Oh, this is one of the worst like British heavyweight fights of all time," or something like that. There have been some bad ones. I remember the likes of your sort of Mickey Steed challenging Scott Gammer back in the day, or Gary Delaney and Julius Francis, and who else was there? There was Keith Long was always he was a joiner by trade, and he gave Danny Williams a good fight, and then got stopped by Matt Skelton. So there are guys maybe of that Shakiva kind of level who've got the shot in the past, but Adelaide, I've written him off. The Sokolowski win wasn't great. I thought his limitations got exposed a little bit there. And then Fabio Wardley again sort of dominated him out in Saudi, and the knockout win over Solomon Dakers maybe says more about Dakers. He's where he's at as a pro than Adelaide. So yeah, if Adelaide can get Shakiva out early, this could be a bit like the main event, a bit of a slugfest, really, with the two of them sitting on top of each other. But I'd say Adelaide, you got to make him a favourite, I think, in that one for the British heavyweight title.
Yeah, I agree. I can't see anything past an Adelaide win. Um, in terms of, you mentioned some interesting names there. Scott the Hammer Gamma. I've actually
Yeah.
because he's from Wales, so I've had the pleasure of writing an article about him. But this fight should be, I mean, like, it should be an entertaining one. Should be an entertaining one, and yeah, I think Adelaide is the rightful favorite. Anyway,
Yeah.
thanks a lot, guys, for listening, and thanks a lot to Steve again for joining me for the 10th episode. If you've enjoyed this, please like, comment, subscribe, and we'll catch you on the next one. Cheers, guys.